Ninja were known to be masters of assassination, but they were also known to be masters of espionage. And we can really just fit in masters of and put in all the other aspects that the ninja or shinobi work towards, to the point of their metallurgy. The practice that they followed was to better themselves. And I want to add to that because they were also masters of the mind. The pursuit of enlightenment seemed to be always part of the course of the practice. Within the Bujinkan, they've got 3 schools that are ninja, and 2 of which really just teach their laws, the way of thought, the way to survive, the ways of perseverance. And I think that's really important because not only is there that masterful, that you're always moving towards perfection, your understanding of perfection. Shikim haramitsu daikomyo, experience perfection in every moment. I think that should be pondered on. Maybe change the way you look upon the word perfect and change it to each moment is perfect already, and you just have to be in that moment, in that timeline, to be perfect. Hey, you may not have gotten it right, but being in it is the perfection. To make it only more confusing, in Kyudo, in the art of archery, when you release that arrow, well, of course it's supposed to hit the target, but if it doesn't hit the target, but you were hitting the target, you were on point, despite missing the point. And that's what's so important here, is that mind that comes into it. Where are we focusing upon? So going back to the shinobi, so 12th century, 1161, 1162, that seems awfully detailed, but let's just go with 1162 for easy math. That timeline, we're just going to pause that in the timeline because, so we have a monk that's traveled to the mountain area of Togakure, today Togakushi, and he met up with a samurai at that time. Let's put them aside because the monk is what I want to follow on for a moment. So for a greater picture here, if this is 1162, we're going to jump back to like 785-ish. So first of all, I want to talk about Bodhidharma. So we've got one of the Buddha, one of the best, that's up to you. Bodhidharma comes along and makes that statement of, it's your mind. This is where we need to look, not into gods, not into the mysticism. Let's look upon the mind, follow the mind, be in the self, and understand the self to gain enlightenment. Thank you, Bodhidharma. And this dude decides, well, I need to take this information and spread it even further. Some records say that he's like Central Asia. Who really knows? We know he's in that part of the world and decides, I want to spread this to as many people I can, so decides to head over to China. China is, of course, a giant culture already. The Shaolin monastery has been functioning, I think at that point, for like 200 years. It's already doing its thing. So it makes sense for Bodhidharma to travel over and spread Chan Buddhism, Japan's Zen Buddhism, that idea of focusing on the mind. And in this time period, so Bodhidharma goes over, a couple hundred years pass, and during this time, this great enlightenment happens because Zen Buddhism is about the mind. And we've got all these different traveling monks that are spreading or learning different sutras and different ways of thought. And as they travel through Asia, some are moving forward, some are moving away. So we get this real ebb and flow of knowledge. So we're going to fast forward to, I think it's the 900 to 1200. Sure, let's say it's that. Let me check my notes. I've got them right in front of me. 950 to 1250, the literacy period. Now, in that, literacy probably is my words, but this is the timeline when there's so many books being written about Chan Buddhism, how to hold the mind, how to become enlightened. I think it's really interesting that we've got 300 years of this spread of knowledge about how to build the mind, how to think, and how to exist. This is the main travel of knowledge. So within that time period, we have a monk, within that 300 years of the knowledge being shared so rapidly, finds his way to Japan and finds his way to Togakushi. So I'm going to have a really good bet that he's had a lot of experiences in different monasteries and different ways of thought and experiences. Because when we jump into Japan at that time, so we say Togakure has been founded, Daisuke has changed his name to Togakure, that monks taught a fair amount to him, and now the martial arts of Ninjutsu can form. Now to speak of the art for a bit, I'm going to take quite highly that we've got the samurai that has his fighting style that's going to come in and influence ninjutsu. And then we have the monk that I'm going to have a quick guess here that he's definitely traveled through China, as most of them have. It says that he had, but he traveled through probably Shaolin area as well for the long, open, wide, short stances that you see in a Shaolin that all look very painful. You see at the beginning of ninjutsu practices. You see that still within our sanshin, within some of our footwork. There's minor variations, but I feel that you can see there was a bit of that spirit of Shaolin that has influenced. And now, like many things, just as Chan influenced and traveled, Shaolin influences, and all of those other myriad of influences arrive in Tokakashi. And now you've kind of pushed it into, and I think it's a very special and important aspect, into this mountain range. Because this specific area had large mountains all the way around it, what made it really hard for others to travel in and out of that area. So there's that little bit of seclusion away from the rest of the world and a chance to allow them to really grow as their own independent culture. To add to the independent culture, but remaining on the Dharma, that practice of the mind, that in that time period, in that location, a religion came up called Shugendo. And this is the only place that Shugendo lived. This was the mountain eccentrics. This was the monks. This is where the Kujikiri comes into place. This is where all the hand signs come into being and become something important for the world eventually to have learned. This is where that life was breathed into it, that idea of satari, that enlightenment, that perspective of the mind. And as I feel within most of those Buddhist traditions, that the mind, that discipline, that way of practice definitely kind of spills into the way of life, the practicing of the art. The Shinobi of this time period were known for their guerrilla warfare. And I hear that as if it's such a war, not torn, but a war culture. When you prize someone for the guerrilla warfare, they're probably coming about everything very differently. In one, I think it was in the 16th, 17th century, it was a treatise written by ninja for samurai. And one of the things was, well, you got to be able to run. And you've got to not have to scream out their names. If you're in service of your Lord, you must act. So it was a completely new philosophy that came out of that time period, which is really neat because it's right within that time period. It just happens to be its own unique way of rules and thoughts about that practice. So we travel to today, that martial art, that practice is still being practiced, but is that mindset being practiced? I'm going to say for the most part, yeah, in many dojos that I've seen, and I hope even more that I haven't seen, do give into that way of thought is what is most important, because that's the tool we use more than anything. The sword means nothing if you can't think correctly. And if you can't think correctly, well, everything's kind of messed up at that point. So all of this big rant is the majority of what we see in pop culture of the ninja is from like the last 400, 350 years. And it's very specific to the war, the espionage, the assassination, all the things that make it really cool in comic books and movies because there's a lot of conflict. But I feel within the actual culture, what these people evolved from, no, that was just absolutely just one side of it. Survival is right in their name. That if you're in the mountains in this area, I imagine just looking after food, making sure that everyone is clothed, being able to find natural resources. Again, just a parenthesis that in this little world, sure, steel is going to be easy to come by, but all the other precious metals, I'm going to use copper, gold, could be a little bit more cumbersome. That when we look at the weaponry of Japan, you'll see a lot of mixtures of steel, the blades of course, and then we get into the furniture. You can have copper mixed with a bit of gold, copper with a bit of silver, a whole bunch of silver. But then when you get to the ninja schools, no, you've got a steel sword with an iron tsuba, iron furniture, everything is steel. Because they would have had to come, find, bring. I'm not saying it was a famine culture. I'm saying it was a culture that had to rely on themselves. And that's where the genius happens within their art. It's that self-reliance of being able to move forward and still make everything work. I think it's just fabulous. It's awesome. It's incredible. It's an art with so much history that still has so much to offer today. I think in many cases more than most arts today can offer, that enlightenment was the number one. That was first and foremost. So I guess without getting political, I'm going to shut up and get back to work, because I think I've even inspired myself to go do about 1,000 cuts. And it's gorgeous. So that said, all the best. Goodbye. I'm shutting up.